Well, so in the story of getting recovered, some of the moments that I was convinced. I think I was convinced for a while, but I didn't know it. I think there was an overriding denial of the convincing. But when that denial, let's say, lifted, then the convincing was there. But it wasn't any event. I think there was many events that formulated the being convinced, but the conditional mind overrode it with a denial. When that denial got suspended, and I would say that was grace, really, then it was sort of like a CNN news flash. There wasn't much story, just a headline. And the headline was, I was screwed. But I really felt like I was screwed, where, I had been screwed for quite a while, but I actually felt like I was screwed that moment. And that was what happened at that moment. The selfing stopped for about a couple minutes. And I hadn't remembered or even entertained the possibility that it was even moving. It was just seemingly so, yeah? But when it stopped, then I realized what a verb it was. But it stopped for a nice short bit of time I would call it a pause. And in that pause, something downloaded into the head, into this little action figure. And I didn't reach for the drink after that. I was with some guy I didn't know, sitting in a trailer. I'd been up for, drinking for 4 days and just a mess. But I didn't reach for the drink, and I actually took another course of action. I left and went to a phone booth and called the program I had been in for 2 years, 10 months before. I'd left 10 months ago, and I'd been drinking and using ever since. And I called them, and I asked if I could come back, and they said no, They said, maybe you can come back in a month. They'd been getting my newsletter, about what I'd been doing probably. And they said, no, you can come back in a month for an interview, maybe. So it was amazing. I said, what came into my head was the first honest thing I'd said in 10 months was, I don't think I have a month, The sense of termination was strong. Like it was getting near the end. And I didn't think I had another round left in me, really. But what happened then, I called up another lady I knew, and she came and picked me up. And as we were driving back to San Francisco, I tried to talk her into buying drugs and getting beer and renting a hotel room and getting dirty magazines. But she had followed that equation with me many times, hadn't been that satisfying for her, I don't think. So she said, no, we're not doing that. And she said, if you want a place to stay tonight, which I wanted, that was basically my agenda. She said, you got to go to a recovery meeting. So she took me to my first meeting. And then what happened in recovery was that fledgling little bit of convinced just got watered every day. Yeah? I became what you'd say thoroughly convinced when I started learning about what I was suffering as. The disease of alcoholism. And there was no turning back at that point. It was almost as if that epoch or era or like that rotation of the earth was over. There was no going back, at least till to this day. And most of the time there's no thought. I've never had a thought about drinking or using for many, many years. Well, I never had a thought anyway, but no thought about it has come up in my head. The only time I ever see drinking and using going on is in my dreams while I'm asleep. So, the convincing, I think, was already there, but there was a denial, an activity of denial that was blocking it. And then an event occurred, I would say, of grace, and that denial was broken, and then all the information that was latent or pregnant just came out. Or actually came in. And then it's sought expression, and so my life turned into a life of recovery, Yeah, I would say that's a good way of putting it. When it's of conditional mind, it's always matched with being unconvinced, yeah? So anytime the conditional mind gets convinced of something, it can never be thoroughly convinced because it's always got a flavor of unconvinced in it, just like yin and yang. It's a dualistic binary system, yeah? So when you really believe you're screwed, in a couple hours you may think you're unscrewed very quickly. This convincing is more like an unspoken yes, yeah? It's sort of like a reverberation that doesn't stop reverberating, and it doesn't have an opposite. That's the convincing I'm talking about, yeah? To be convinced on that level is to be convinced thoroughly. It's like being dyed. You're not being dyed in two colors. It's not a back side and a front side. It's just permeates, yes? Complete. So I think the mind itself has that ability, but the conditional mind doesn't, based on its format, yeah? It can be seemingly thoroughly convinced only to be acting unconvinced in a very short time. So that's what I'm speaking about. So therefore, when the message gets received, and if possible by entertaining I'm not that, which is sort of like letting the ball be thrown in a game and not reaching up with your mitt, yeah? Then the ball hits its target. You keep thinking it's you. You keep raising your mitt as if the ball's thrown to you, but it may not be the target. When I'm not that which is raising up to meet it, then maybe it gets to its real target, which is mind, and at that aspect of mind, convincing occurs there. Yeah? Yeah. Well, I would say about becoming aware of being convinced or not convinced, they can have an understanding about it that could be helpful, but really, just like in the word surrender in recovery, surrender is a very important word in recovery, surrender, yeah? Yet, I had many very catastrophic events that didn't provoke a surrender. So I needed to have the grace of surrender to know surrender. I couldn't know surrender before it happened, yeah? So it happened to me in that little trailer, and now my mind can entertain surrender because it was given to me, yeah, as a gift. Not to me, obviously, but given. So I believe you can have an understanding that may be able to allow you to recognize it when it occurs, but I say that that's in an area of grace when it comes to surrender. Yeah. That's my own personal take on it, with it. But you can have an understanding. And I would say it's almost like the path of negation. You have an understanding about what you're not, which will sort of provoke a sense of surrender of that idea, which will be like the momentum will be supplied by grace, yes? Downloads, yeah. And it's never forgotten that. So now it can sort of entertain surrender, yeah? So it's like, and now it's not a surrender anymore, it's surrendered. It's like a state. Like, it's like when a surrender becomes like stabilized, it's surrendered. Yeah, it's really nice baseline to be able to rest on, which is also, let's say the tiles of that like floor, the tiles of it are convinced, yeah? You're convinced of all the main principles. So you have a very, very sound foundation that life is bouncing off of, yeah? Yeah.